Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to another video on ForgottenWeapons.com. I'm Ian McCollum, and I am back today at Aimpoint in Malmo, Sweden, taking a look at the second generation of Aimpoint optics. And today, we're going to start with the Aimpoint 2000, and we're going to talk about it, and then the Aimpoint 3000 and 5000 series. So let's dive right into it. In 1985, Aimpoint introduces the Aimpoint 2000, and it really is a revolutionary change in everything about the Aimpoint optic. To put this in context, this is the Aimpoint Electronic Mark III. This was the standard product in 1985 when the Aimpoint 2000 is released. This is set up for mounting directly on Weaver rail. It has this huge battery and electronics compartment on the side, and its zero is adjusted by physically moving the lens inside, left, right, and up or down. With the Aimpoint 2000, the company moved to a mounting system of standard traditional rails, just like you would mount a telescopic sight. They chose a 25 millimeter, they chose a 1 inch in diameter tube, the same as what was really standard in most markets at the time. And then in addition to a rheostatic power adjustment to control how bright the dot was, they also included this, a photocell sensor that would detect how bright the light was wherever the scope was and automatically adjust the brightness commensurate to your current brightness. So they had a number of very forward-looking design features here. In addition, the zeroing method changed substantially. So here, this tube is the body tube of the optic. It's just inert and solid. The electronics and the lens are mounted on a tube here. So this is actually a separate component from this tube. And there's essentially a ring mount in here, like a bushing. And the zero adjustment dials back here pivot this entire inner tube around its bushing at the front. So this is, well, where this has to have a lens that can move, which is kind of always going to be a fragile element of the system. In this, the lens is fixed into its internal tube mount along with the electronics, and that whole package is moved around. And this would remain the standard sort of style of zero adjustment for all of Aimpoint optics going forward till essentially 2024. Now for batteries, this uses the same batteries as the Aimpoint Electronic Mark III. There's two of them in here. These would have been RM1N mercury batteries, or today, if you have one of these, you can also use PC1A alkaline batteries. Or, interestingly, this will also fit a CR123 as long as you peel the label off of it, because otherwise it's physically a little bit too large in diameter to fit. And this was available with either a 3 or a 7 minute of angled dot. Now, the Aimpoint 2000 changed everything about the sight from the previous Electronic Mark III, but not all of those elements worked really well. So in 1989, Aimpoint releases the Aimpoint 3000, where they take essentially the best elements of the 2000 and also the best elements of the 1000 and combine them together into one ideal optic. So the 1000 was released during the early production of the 2000. It is, yes, they actually produced the 2000 before the 1000. The concept here was to take this original Mark III and miniaturize its electronics package and its battery system. And they did that, and it worked well. And at the same time, this photosensor on the 2000 was not all that popular. The problem was this does an okay job of setting the dot brightness to match whatever light you are currently standing in. But let's say you are a hunter sitting in a tree stand looking out into an open bright field. Well, you're in shadow, so this sensor is going to see very little light and it's going to give you a very dim dot, but what you're actually looking into is, let's say, a very bright, wide open field. That's not a really good combination. So they get rid of the photosensor and they changed the form factor. Having this battery compartment hanging off the side of the optic body was not hugely popular with a lot of shooters. So take this miniaturized system, put it up on the side of the optic like that, in place of this compartment, and presto, you get the best of both worlds. So the Aimpoint 3000 is released in 1989, and it would stay in production for 14 years, all the way until 2003. It's this optic that first attracts the attention of US Special Forces. At the same time here, we also get a click adjustable power setting, 9 different settings there. The battery is now the much smaller 1/3N, which is not in this one, and there's only one of those batteries necessary for it. This retains the 1-inch in diameter tube that was still very common at the time. It's released onto the market in 1989 and would stay in production all the way until 2003. In 1991, Aimpoint recognizes that larger diameter tubes are starting to become popular in traditional magnified scopes, and the customer base is starting to ask for that from Aimpoint as well. So instead of the traditional 1-inch tubes, 30-millimeter tubes are starting to become a thing, particularly in Europe. They let more light through. This is obviously beneficial in magnified optics, but it also makes sense in a red dot. You have a larger field of view, and so Aimpoint releases the Aimpoint 5000 with a 30-millimeter tube in 1991. Now, this is fundamentally, in fact, it's almost exactly the same scope as the Aimpoint 3000. This is the early style of power selector on the 3000. This changes to this slightly smaller dial, but the 3000 and the 5000 are the exact same technology, the same electronics, the same LED, the same adjustment systems, just in different tube sizes. So 1-inch for the 3000 and 30-millimeter for the 5000. While the 3000 remains in production for almost a decade and a half, the 5000 is the platform in which Aimpoint starts to introduce a bunch of other variations and options. So you could get the 5000 in different colors. They had some custom options. They had a pink and a blue. They also offered it in various years in both mossy oak and realtree camouflage, which is kind of cool. The 5000 was also available in silver. The 3000, by the way, standard colors were silver and black. 5000, the standard colors, silver and black, plus some of the optional special editions as well. They offered the mag dot version, which is all the same scope, except instead of having the option of 3 or 7 MOA, you got the options of 10 or 15 MOA, really, truly huge dots. These are starting to be used by competitive pistol shooters, and some of those folks want a really big dot for really fast sight acquisition for action pistol shooting. And then there is perhaps the most unusual variation, which is the 2x magnification 5000. So this, in practice, is actually not a very good compromise. It gives you some of kind of the worst of both worlds of red dots and magnified optics. You have reduced field of view. It's hard to use with both eyes open, but you also only get 2-power magnification instead of the more usable magnification you can get from a true telescopic sight. This exists because Gunnar Sandberg, the original co-founder of the company, the financier who started Aimpoint, well, he had a bunch of friends who were hunters who used magnified traditional scopes, and they apparently kept pestering him to try a magnified version. So they went ahead and made a magnified version of the 5000. It did not sell particularly well because, well, it's actually really not a good solution. But it was out there and it was available for a limited time. And then lastly, in 1998, really right at the tail end of Aimpoint 5000 production, Aimpoint developed an improved LED technology, which they called XD, or Extreme Duty, which they added into the 5000 model. Now, this would end up becoming the Aimpoint Comp series, but that is a subject for a future video. The comps started out as Comp XDs and then moved on from there, but we'll cover that separately later. I'm bringing this out just because you will occasionally find 5000s with all of these original features, like this, the internal tube, adjustable tube being on the outside here. with the XD system. It was with the Aimpoint 3000 that the company really began to attract the attention of military and security organizations. Aimpoint had been selling optics to police agencies before this, but US Special Forces started to notice this as a, frankly, high-tech, forward-looking style of optic and started to buy them in small numbers outside of standard government procurement track and use them. And this particularly came to light in 1991 when General Norman Schwarzkopf was seen with a Delta Force security team who had Aimpoint 3000s mounted on their CAR-15s. And if you see Delta Force using something, it really says something about that product's viability. And when people saw Aimpoints with Delta Force, it brought a whole lot of visibility to the company. So you would see continued use of Aimpoint products in small numbers by US Special Forces organizations. We see it on Black Hawk Down. Shugart's M14 had probably an Aimpoint 3000. At this point, by the way, 30 millimeter rings and tubes were not particularly common in the US. So most of the US Special Forces use was probably Aimpoint 3000s because the 1-inch diameter tubes were more accessible and available, but both were certainly out there and available. At any rate, this eventually leads to the adoption of the Aimpoint Comp series as the US M68 close combat optic, but that is a subject for another video a little bit later. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this look at some of Aimpoint's early ring/tube mounted optics. Big thanks to Aimpoint for giving me access to these to film for you guys. Thanks for watching.